Do you remember the past the way it was, or the way we wished it to be? You are certain of a detail from childhood, a line from a movie, a logo on a book cover. And then you see the record, and it does not match. And something inside you goes cold. They named the phenomenon after Nelson Mandela, because thousands swore he died in prison in the 80s. And yet the archive says he lived on until 2013. That mismatch entered the language, and the world called it the Mandela Effect. This is the chill at the edge of knowing, a small rupture between what you feel and what the ledger proves. Some call it a glitch in timelines. Some call it a collective error. I call it a proof that memory is a ritual. Every time you summon the past, you do not open a vault. You speak the past into being. You retell it, and it rewrites itself. You cast the oldest spell there is. And sometimes the spell misfires. Hold that unease, because this is not merely trivia. It is a window into how minds make the world. Stay with me. Nelson Mandela. For many people, his story has two endings. One ending they swear they lived through. The funeral on television, the news reports from the 80s, the feeling of a chapter closing before it ever had the chance to open. But history says otherwise. Mandela walked free from prison in 1990. He became president of South Africa. He died decades later in 2013. The rift between those two versions of memory gave this phenomenon its name, the Mandela Effect. And here is the simple definition. The Mandela Effect is when large numbers of people share the same false memory, not just being wrong alone, but being wrong together, with conviction, with detail, with certainty. That is what makes it so unsettling. This is not your private lapse. This is a communal hallucination. If something so public, so well documented, can fracture in the collective memory, what else can't you trust? It did not stop with Mandela. The cracks spread wider. Whole generations insist the children's books were spelled Berenstain, when the record says Berenstain. Millions repeat the Star Wars line as Luke, I am your father, though the film itself says no, I am your father. And countless people swear the Monopoly man wore a monocle, even though he never did. The details shift, the conviction remains, the past bends, and the mind refuses to notice the bend. This is the contagion. Memory does not only fail alone, it fails in chorus. And when many misremember together, the illusion feels like proof. But illusions have mechanisms. They are not random. They are patterned. And if you want to see through them, you must learn how memory itself is built. Memory is not a vault. It is not a perfect recording of the past. It is a ritual. Each time you remember, you summon the fragments, and in the act of summoning, you change them. Your hippocampus fills the gaps like a painter guessing at missing strokes. Your schemas bend details toward what feels familiar. Your prefrontal cortex decides where a memory came from, and sometimes it guesses wrong. Every recall is a reconstruction. Every reconstruction is an edit. And once edited, the new version overwrites the old. That process is called reconsolidation. The memory you recall today is not the same memory you formed years ago. It has already been rewritten by the very act of touching it. This is why the conviction feels so strong. The story in your head has been rehearsed, polished, stamped in place. But its foundation is unstable. You are not retrieving truth. You are retelling a myth of yourself, which means this: every time you remember, you are editing reality. You are performing a spell. That changes the past as it lives inside you. Memory does not live in isolation. It spreads. It echoes between people until the echo becomes the song. One person misremembers a word. Another repeats it. And with each repetition, the error grows stronger until the error itself feels like the truth. This is social contagion. Repetition becomes reality. The chorus overpowers the archive. On the internet, the effect is amplified. A single misquote spreads like wildfire. A distorted logo is reposted until it feels more real than the original. Millions of minds, rehearsing the same mistake, forge a new consensus. In occult language, this is a sigil, a symbol charged by attention and belief, until it takes on a power of its own. What begins as a private error becomes a collective thought form, an egregore of memory. So when millions recall the same false detail, is it only memory? Or the birth of something stranger? Something alive? Woven from the minds of the crowd. Now it is your turn. A brief ritual of memory. I will read a list of words. Listen carefully. Do not write them down. Just hold them. Bed. Rest. Awake. Tired. Dream. Snooze. Blanket. Nap. Slumber. Snore. Pillow. Now pause. Close your eyes for a moment if you can. Try to recall the list. Most of you will be certain that the word sleep was in there. You can almost hear it. You can almost see it on the page. But it was never spoken. What you felt is called a false memory. Your hippocampus completed the pattern. Your semantic network fired the most likely candidate. And your prefrontal cortex failed to tag the true source. In less than a minute, you summoned a ghost. A phantom word. A spirit of memory that never existed. This is how fragile the process is. And this is how convincing it feels. If you saw the phantom word, mark yourself in the comments with the phrase, "Memory burned. You have just witnessed your own mind, rewriting the record in real time. If you are skeptical, remember this. Stage hypnotists routinely have volunteers believe they are animals, rowing a boat, losing control of their limbs. They do it with suggestion, context, and attention. What does that tell us about the malleability of experience? It tells us the mind is obedient to story, rhythm, and social cue. The uncanny from the Mandela Effect is the same family of magic. It is suggestion braided with memory. It is attention turned into architecture. Neuroscience gives us a map. Prediction engines in the brain run on priors. When there is ambiguity, the brain prefers a tidy guess. Prediction error. Signals fire. The salience network blinks, and the hippocampus completes what the cortex expects. At the same time, arousal systems reward the neat pattern. A small hit of dopamine for a story that snaps into place. So plausible errors are not merely tolerated, they are reinforced. Add social proof and repetition, and the error stabilizes. The DMN whispers a plausible narrative, while the executive parts of the brain stand down. You feel certainty, even as the world says otherwise. That is why the experience is vertiginous. It feels like the universe slipped, because your internal prediction tightened into a belief. You prefer a dramatic plot twist to the humiliating thought that your memory was wrong. So you knit together meaning, blame the world, summon conspiracies, invent timelines. But none of that erases the mechanics. It only explains why the mechanics feel like myth. Despite all our advances in neuroscience, there is still no adequate explanation for how hypnosis works. Yes, we can describe networks in the brain, the role of suggestion, the modulation of attention, but because hypnosis is bound so tightly to consciousness itself, we do not have a final answer. The mystery remains. That should give you pause, because it means our experience can be shaped in ways science can describe, but not fully explain. The rational mind can map the process, but the map does not dissolve the magic. This is where the skeptic's lantern is needed, not to dismiss the strangeness, but to see it more clearly. The Mandela Effect is not proof of fractured timelines. It is proof of the fragility of memory. Each recall is a ritual. Each repetition a reprogramming. The record of your life is unstable, because instability is how the mind survives chaos. In fact, this fragility is a strength. It allows us to update, to revise, to adapt. Without it, you would be trapped in every past mistake, unable to edit, unable to grow. So hold the lantern steady. Do not mistake mystery for miracle. Do not mistake anomaly for apocalypse. See instead the deeper truth that the self you cling to is already a story, rewritten line by line each time you speak it aloud. What if you could be intentional about the stories you keep and the ones you let go? Memory is not fate. It is text you can edit. Not by erasing the past, but by changing how you tell it. We do not have to be passive witnesses to the slow drift of our own history. we can become careful priests of our inner archive, choosing which narratives to rehearse, which sigils to charge with attention, which ghosts to unbind. Keep watching, and the pieces will begin to join. The patterns will sharpen, and the ritual will become practice. Practice that shifts the shape of your days and the shape of your remembering, if this unsettled you. That is the point. Unease is the door. Curiosity is the key. Share what failed you. Where two people remember the same room differently. Where a line from your childhood turned into a different life. Write it in the comments. No explanation needed. Just the trace of the misremembered moment. Subscribe if you want more of this work. Your subscription is not mere arithmetic. It is a pledge. A small ritual that keeps this signal alive, so we can keep exploring. So the lamp stays lit. Together we will learn to read the patterns, to spot the sigils, to refuse false certainty, and to write a saner story for ourselves. This is your license to depart. Until next time, keep your lantern bright, and do not trust memory without witness. Stay curious. Until next time.